everybody was leaving us alone until April 6th. And I streamed, the David Icke, the second conversation of this year. It was the second biggest live stream on YouTube in the world that day, right behind President Trump. And so clearly a lot of people wanted to watch it. And 30 minutes later, it was banned and deleted. And I got thrust into this fight. And my gut reaction, I don't know if it's because I grew up in America or not, was something's wrong here. We should be able to put these conversations out. I've had a lot of people on my show I don't agree with, a lot over the years. And what happened is a lot of them actually changed my mind over 3, 4, 5 years. And I know you've changed your mind a lot of times in your life, from religious to not religious. And I watched myself changing over the years, and I just thought, wow, I really do need to have lots of different points of view in here, because I'm a different person in the future. And I would have definitely wanted that person earlier in my life to become the person I want to become. And now, like you said, now I'm the censored. So before, it was always the weirdos being censored, like the Ikes and the crazies and the Alex Joneses. And now it's us. And now I know how they feel. And now I realize that, I don't think I'm crazy. I don't think I'm radical. And yet, when I say one of 3 different words right now, I can be banned and deplatformed from YouTube. If I say COVID-19, 5G, vaccine together, it's over. And I'm literally 1 strike away from being off the platform. That's a 9-year relationship, 250 million views, 2 million subscribers. I'm this close to being gone because of these policies. So I really appreciate you articulating what you just said, because I've been bumping to people on the streets here in London, and I pull out my camera and I say, what do you think about what's been going on? And everyone tries to articulate what you're trying to say. And they all say, Brian, we want to hear what they have to say. That's what they say. We just want to hear what he has to say so we can make a decision. So it's that fundamental need as a human, I guess, to want to hear something different.
Yeah. Well, let's take that example. I think the idea that 5G is associated with the COVID-19 pandemic is ridiculous. It's wrong. But so what? If you can't reason around that and think about that and recognize it for what it is, then that's your problem, not the person articulating it. And again, the moment you set up a gatekeeper, so YouTube has, I don't know what they've got, an army of employees that sit there and watch their videos, or they have some algorithm that just looks for certain keywords or phrases that tags it. I'm not sure how it works. Maybe it's both. But so what happens if it's not Alex Jones or David Icke, but it's some medical researcher at Harvard that says, I have some doubts about, the CDC or Fauci's interpretation of the data, and here's my alternative to that. What if he gets caught up in that censorship? I actually want to hear what he has to say. And I can think for myself. I can evaluate Alex Jones' conspiracy theory as well as anybody. So, who are you to tell me, who I shouldn't listen to? So that's the argument against that kind of censorship. Again, it's their right. It's a private company, but they shouldn't do it. It's not good. And I don't think it's the equivalent of, say, ISIS recruiting, people online through the platform. I think maybe there's some arguments to be made for that. But so here's the problem. Goes back to 1919 with the U.S. Supreme Court decision in Schenck versus the United States. So Charles Schenck was the head of the Socialist Party in Philadelphia, and he was protesting the draft. So the United States instituted conscription, in which they forced young men to go to war in Europe. This is the Great War. And he thought that's really unconstitutional, because the 13th Amendment guarantees your right not to be enslaved. The 14th Amendment guarantees your right to bodily autonomy, that somebody can't take away your life or control your body. And that's what the draft is. Basically, the government is saying, for the next 4 years or whatever, we own you, and we can send you to your death if we want. So now that's a debatable thing. Maybe in the time of national crisis, we need that. Maybe we don't. Maybe it's overreach or not. But just the idea that he was protesting that by issuing flyers to young men who were, in the line to register for the draft. And he said, this is against your constitutional right. And so for this, he was charged with a form of treason. And the government convicted him, and the U.S. Supreme Court decided in this case, and I'll read you the famous passage on this, because this is what has generated this idea of hate speech that we're talking about now, although they didn't use that word. So this is Supreme Court Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes in the Schenck versus the United States 1919 case, in his now famous oft-quoted lines: "The most stringent protection of free speech would not protect a man in falsely shouting fire in a theater and causing a panic. The question in every case is whether the words used are used in such circumstances and are of such a nature as to create a clear and present danger that they will bring about the substantive evils that Congress has a right to prevent." So what were these clear and present danger words that he was using? It was, the draft is unconstitutional. That is surely a debatable point. Now, maybe you think it's not unconstitutional, but that's beside the point. The idea that the government can say, you can't say that. That's, so the moment you set up a category, now we have a bin. This is dangerous speech, that a clear and present danger, that's the equivalent of shouting fire in a crowded theater. Okay. Then the category expands. Like, anything could be put in there that the government doesn't like, or you don't like, or I don't like. And so by the time you get to, say, the 1970s, we start having this, idea of political correctness, and certain language and words matter. And those are now, the phrase we use today is hate speech. Well, as I show in the book, in the 1850s, Southerners were very concerned about abolitionists coming to the South, Northern abolitionists coming to the South to rail against slavery. And they considered that hate speech. Now, they didn't use that word hate speech. That's a modern term. But they were saying this could rile up slaves, and they may have a slave revolt. This could be very dangerous. It leads to violence. We can't have these rabble rousers coming down here from the North to give speeches and print flyers and so on. And so they censor them. Now, today we hear that and go, what? No, of course abolitionists should have their voice. Yeah, well, who's the equivalent of that today? Who are you to judge? With hindsight, we can look back. Okay, in the 1950s, century later, again, the Southern whites were very concerned about people like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X coming down there to give speeches about their civil rights. And they considered that dangerous, a clear and present danger. So once you build the category of these are the kinds of things that could be a clear and present danger to the public safety or whatever, anything anybody wants to throw in there, including David Icke going on your show to talk about COVID-19 or whatever, oh, that's dangerous.